How much power can one man accumulate before he becomes a myth? What makes someone go from being a mere revolutionary to one of the most feared and hated leaders of the 20th century? Is it possible for an ordinary man born into poverty to become the author of millions of deaths and still be revered by many? To unearth the secrets of Joseph Stalin, a leader who went from being a humble Georgian boy to one of the greatest genocides in history, we must explore his life. But was Stalin really a double agent? How did he manage to survive and consolidate his power while eliminating everyone who stood in his way? Stay until the end, because Stalin's story is filled with betrayals, secrets, and more. This is a journey into the dark heart of the Soviet Union. To understand Stalin, we need to go back to his origins. He was born in Gori, Georgia, on December 18, 1878, into a poor and abusive family. His father, a violent alcoholic, frequently beat him, and his mother did not escape the abuse. From a young age, Stalin experienced the brutal side of life, which perhaps shaped his character and temperament. But who was this boy before he became known as Stalin? He was born with the name Joseph Vissarionovich Jugashvili, a name that he would later change to a more symbolic one, Stalin, which means steel in Russian. And it wasn't just a name, it was a declaration of intent. In his youth, he excelled in school, standing out in creative subjects such as poetry and drama. However, fate had other plans for him. His path led him to the Russian Orthodox seminary, but there he veered into something much more dangerous: Marxism. In secret, he began reading Das Kapital by Karl Marx and participating in clandestine clubs where they debated revolution. How did a young man with such a dark and violent past transform into an unyielding leader? This is just the beginning of Stalin's rise. At the beginning of the 20th century, Russia was on the brink of revolution, and Stalin, better known as Koba, his first alias, was at the center of it. Koba, inspired by a character from a revolutionary novel, joined the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party, a party that sought to overthrow the Tsar. But what really began to define Stalin was not just his ideas, but his actions. In 1907, Stalin participated in the robbery of a state bank carriage in Tiflis. This was not just any robbery, it was an organized heist to finance the revolutionary activities of the Bolsheviks. Although Stalin managed to escape with his life, he was starting to become known for his brutality and lack of scruples. Over the years, Stalin was arrested several times and sent into exile in Siberia, but he always managed to escape. Was it luck, or was there something more going on behind the scenes? There are theories suggesting that Stalin may have been a double agent, collaborating with the secret police of the Tsar, the Okhrana, while also working for the Bolsheviks. A traitor or a master of deception? The evidence is scarce, but suspicion lingers. After the Russian Revolution of 1917, the Bolsheviks, led by Lenin, seized power. But the country was far from stable. Amid the chaos, Stalin positioned himself as a key player within the party. In 1922, he was appointed General Secretary of the Communist Party, a seemingly administrative position, but one that Stalin used to weave a network of loyalty and ensure that the right people were in the right places. Lenin at first saw him as a protege, but at the end of his life, he realized that Stalin was a threat. Lenin, already weakened by illness, tried to warn his comrades about the danger that Stalin represented, but it was too late. Stalin had placed his loyalists in key positions, and after Lenin's death in 1924, he began to eliminate his rivals. Trotsky, Kamenev, Zinoviev all fell. Stalin didn't just want to be the party leader, he wanted absolute control over the Soviet Union. And he achieved it, but at what cost? The man who once wrote about the unity of nations would become one of the greatest architects of genocide and mass purges. By the late 1920s and early 1930s, Stalin had consolidated his power, but that wasn't enough. He began a series of purges, eliminating not only his political rivals, but anyone who might pose a threat, real or imagined. Thousands of officials, intellectuals, peasants, and ordinary citizens were arrested, sent to gulags, or executed without trial. Between 1937 and 1938, the Great Purges eliminated over 680,000 people, and the number of prisoners in the gulags skyrocketed. Stalin established quotas for executions, meaning that to meet the goals, local authorities had to arrest and kill innocent people. But Stalin didn't stop there. Even former allies like Kamenev and Zinoviev were accused of treason and executed. Stalin's total control over the Soviet Union was cemented in blood. Despite all this, Stalin wasn't done with his list of crimes. In 1939, the USSR signed the Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact with Nazi Germany, ensuring that both countries would not attack each other. Stalin thought he had bought time, but in 1941, Hitler betrayed the pact and invaded the USSR. The war was brutal. In the Battle of Stalingrad, more than 1 million soldiers died. And while Stalin fought against the Nazis, he also continued his policy of repression. In Ukraine, forced collectivization and the famines caused by Stalin's policies resulted in the deaths of 2.5 to 5 million people in what is now known as the Holodomor. But despite the terrible losses, the USSR emerged victorious from the war. However, for the Soviet people, the victory came at a high cost: the leadership of a man who had caused more death and suffering than any external enemy. Joseph Stalin died in 1953, but his legacy lives on, not only in the history of the USSR, but in the suffering of millions who lived under his regime. Throughout his life, Stalin manipulated, eliminated his rivals, and ruled with total control over every aspect of Soviet society. But the question remains: how could one man concentrate so much power and cause so much destruction? Was it the result of his environment, his ability to manipulate others, or simply an insatiable thirst for power? The mystery of Stalin continues to resonate today as a reminder of the horrors that totalitarianism can inflict. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more about historical figures who left as bloody a mark on history as Stalin, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you won't miss the upcoming videos. See you in the next journey through history.